Hey everybody, welcome to Bookshore. Got my new book boo, and I'm reviewing the new book, Sisters by DaisyJohnson. I meant to get this review out like end of August, but it didn't work out. So Sisters is a book obviously about two sisters. One is named September, one is named July. The book takes place through July's perspective, who is the younger sister by 10 months, and they live with their single mother, who is a children's book author. She basically gets depressed and goes back to her old family house, where they kind of live a bit more in poverty. But this book just jumps around in the timeline of these two sisters' lives from their school days, from elementary to teenagehood to the burgeoning sexuality, and it's just kind of like a snapshot of like their adolescence. Now, the interesting thing about this book and is again the dynamic between the two sisters, in that September is very controlling of July. July is very passive, subdued, doesn't speak a lot, and September makes a lot of decisions for July. It's almost, in a sense, an abusive relationship in that it is a non-consensual, and you kind of see that kind of towards the end of the book, slight spoilers, where July kind of starts thinking about finding her own self and thinking about times in the book where she wants to speak out against September and doesn't agree with what she is doing. Now, the reason for this strange relationship between the two is because as a family unit, it's very weak in that their father has died when they were young, and the mother has severe depression. One point of the book, they don't even see her for like weeks at a time, just because she's in her bedroom, just really suffering with her mental health. So it left the children up to their own. They say the strongest family dynamic or relationship bond is between a mother and a daughter, and this is almost like what would happen without this dynamic. And September, what she decided to do, intentionally not, is take up that dominant role. Now, she doesn't take the role of replacing the mother. In fact, I think this is why a bit of the title Sisters and goes to the novel instead of Mothers, is because she isolates July in a sense. It's almost like a romantic relationship in a sense. I mean, there's no romance between the two characters, but she does it in this, not in a motherly sense, but in a very domineering sense. And again, maybe the relationship could only really be described as siblings. Like when you have an older brother, which I do, when you're younger, you follow them a lot more, you trust them a lot more, sometimes a little bit more than your parents, and you go towards that because it's like reaching beyond your parental figures. So the first person you can really do that with, if you don't have immediate friends, would be your immediate sibling. And that's kind of like the relationship, the idea that you get, where July trusts September, even though there's not a large age gap, she trusts her with a lot of the decision making in a sense. But then it also gets misconstrued, because even though she loves September, September does take advantage of that. She does take advantage of July's trust, in that she knows that she has her in the palm of her hand and that she can kind of direct her into any way she wants. Even if there's one game in the book where she says that you think, September says like paint your nails, September says do a somersault. Now cut off your finger or put a needle in you. So she does that stuff, and July won't do it, but September does have that kind of mean-spirited streak in her. It's very apparent. You see it later on in the novel, where there is violent tendencies in her that have been subdued within her. Now, in terms of the language of this book, this is, again, DaisyJohnson, I still feel, lies within the modernist genre. It's almost stream of consciousness, but not in the sense of like Guignol's Band or James Joyce, in that the narrative is reflected off the thought process of the author. It is, but more in that literary style of like first person, like just like basic first person that you always read in school and whatnot. It's not directly like seeing all the events through the mind. However, she kind of reminds me of Faulkner, where she doesn't mind jumping around from perspective to perspective. So even though the book is predominantly through July's point of view, she'll have some segments where it'll be through September, or like even a whole section in the book where it's through the mother's point of view. And she doesn't mind that trade-off, and she doesn't give any clear indication when it happens, so you just kind of have to figure it out on your own, which again I kind of appreciate, because she's saying to the reader, like, I trust you, you're not an idiot, you can like figure this out. But also a great thing that DaisyJohnson is great is like the little details in life, like the events of even just like when they were going into the house, putting the food away, getting situated, not having internet, watching old movies and TV shows on the computer, taking baths together. I think they took baths together. And then, like, once they finally do get the internet, just kind of how that kind of changes things where they have more stuff to do, but then they still go to the beach and whatnot. And I kind of like that just because somebody, in this generation, it's like you have a lot of examples in literature of what pre-internet looks like, but you don't have a lot of examples in literature where, how do you, growing up with the internet and having those childlike ruminations and that nostalgia with the internet as well. So I do like how she approaches that in this book, and I think she did a really good job of having that balance where they're just not on YouTube all day like a normal child would probably be, but at the same time really addressing it and showing it is an integral part to childhood experiences. Now, another aspect of this book is sexuality. Slight spoilers, but one point when September loses her virginity, July loses her virginity with the same person, and as well as when she sees it, she kind of almost experiences losing her virginity through September as well. Having that idea of being so interconnected. Not to contradict my last review, there is a form of subservience in a relationship that can take place, but you kind of get the sense that this isn't wholly consensual. And you can see how intermeshed they are in a toxic way, where she interprets her sister's sexuality as her own, while her sister had sex with a man that she was herself into. And just that level of toxicity where she is putting her sister's experience too much with on her own, to the point where she is losing experiences of her own through that. Even though she does have sex with the same guy, the guy thinks it's her sister. So even with that person's experience of losing her virginity, it's not viewed within her old person, because the guy doesn't even know that it's a separate person. Now, I am going to have to, I said some slight spoilers, but I'm going to have to bring 2 points of contention I have with the book into play now, and that's with, so spoilers, major spoilers ahead. It's like, one, July's nudes. She gets tricked by a guy in her class that she finds attractive, and her nudes get disseminated through the school. And I thought that was an interesting part to go through, and I would have loved more exploration in it. At first I thought like, oh, they did it, but I felt like it was almost more of an afterthought in a sense. It didn't really seem to add up, because that happens before they go to the house, and once they're at the house they kind of just forget about it. It's like it's all cut up in between, but like they just kind of forget about it. I wish there was more of an exploration in there. And two, September, big spoiler, September dies at the end of this novel, and the way she dies is she gets electrocuted in a rainstorm by a falling electrical line. And I just kind of felt like it was a little bit too YA. It just seemed a bit extreme. The narrative was going to another place where she was gonna stab the guy that disseminated the nudes of July, and I felt like that would have been a more interesting path to take. I can understand why they went the way of her dying, because then the novel goes into exploring the grief of the mother and the child, and having to deal with the fact that this person is not playing a trick. They're not going to come back. She's excluded from their daily lives forever because of this freak accident. But I felt like seeing September really embrace those violent tendencies and really get at that would have helped the plot point with the nudes being leaked, and it wouldn't have seemed as extreme or drastic. It just kind of seemed like DaisyJohnson just does a really great job with conveying human characters, conveying the day-to-day life of things, and that part just seems sort of out of place. But that's not to knock on the novel too much, because I did enjoy the novel. I liked everything under a bit more, but again, DaisyJohnson just shows that she is really great at depicting poverty, depicting the difficult family relationships between parents and siblings, between sisters as well, showing that female perspective on struggles as well, and how sometimes it can be internalized and the emotions that go on with it. I think she's a great author. I really want to read more of her when she releases that. I know she just released this, so I'll not be another 2 years. But for some reason, after reading this book, I got the sense that I'd really like to read a big family epic from her, like multi-generational one. I know that's kind of weird to put on authors. I'm not expecting it at all, but I just kind of got that sense that she'd be great at that. But her language is really beautiful throughout the novel. She is really good at painting like a scene that is almost airy but weighted, in the sense that it's almost painted with nostalgia. it's almost idealized to a sense, but not too far where it comes off as hokey, and also but weighted in the gravity of the situation. The characters are never really escaping it. They're more having these nostalgic moments within the trauma of the situation. So that is my review of Sisters by Daisy Johnson. I definitely recommend checking out. It's a pretty short book as well, and it is enjoyable. Her name is Miss Blankenship. She's the ex-husband of Victor Blankenship from Vic Romano. Kenny Blankenship from MXC. It's the worst joke in my life.